I'm here. I was just admiring all of the lights and stuff, but I'm about to come up to the room. Oh, what do you mean you're not there? Where are you? Okay. All right, well, I'm in my robe. Okay. I'll meet you there. Okay, cool. Bye.
Hey, great, you found me. Come on in.
Wow, okay, so what room's this then?
This is the one of the fancy backstage rooms at the Savoy.
Ooh, okay.
Which is for audience members who like to have a very special experience when they arrive. So rather than just coming to watch the show, they get a little box of marmalade sandwiches and a marmalade martini, I think, and some other...
Oh, that sounds like me. A bit of marmalade martini.
Yeah.
Okay, so I forgive you then for not being able to come to the hotel.
I'm really sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I have to apologise. I'm really sorry. Although it wasn't actually my fault. I blame the bear because this is press week and so we've got shows every night and Paddington wanted to run his lines to make sure he had them right. So that's what I got caught up with.
Okay, well, I can't be angry at Paddington.
No one can be.
I understand.
He's too cute.
The only thing is that we normally order room service and
I
don't know what we're going to do about the food.
Well, he did, by way of apology, he has actually been a little bit kind, as he always is, and he had a little chat with him and he said he always keeps a sandwich under his hat in case of an emergency. And he even went to the trouble of going backstage to the Savoy to get this. It's not a hat, but it's a bit fancier than a hat. So
let me guess.
A marmalade sandwich.
Amazing.
Made specially by Paddington.
Oh, great. Okay.
So,
all is forgiven. We've got our marmalade sandwiches. Okay. Well, we'll tuck into those in a minute then. Thank you, Paddington. Do pass on my love. I really appreciate that telling. Right. So, Jess, this is the first time that I have cards. And I'm going to draw attention to them. But this is the reason why I have cards is because you are, without a doubt, the most impressive human being I have had the pleasure of chatting to. I've had to write down some of the things that you've been involved in because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember them. I don't want to not do you justice.
Well, so very kind.
I feel like it's like this is your life.
I know, it feels a bit like that. Although I wonder if actually it's more like, rather than being very impressive, it's more that I've just been a bit of a mongrel and kind of moved around a lot and done different things because that's the
creative frame, isn't it? I guess that is. So
it's scatty.
let's start, and in no particular order: filmmaker, writer, director, associate artist for the Youth Bridge Theatre Global, which we'll talk about in a moment, advocate for gender equality in the entertainment industry through a charity called Time's Up UK, which I'm really interested about, author of an amazing book that I believe was released this year. Is that right?
Yeah.
A year of creative thinking, 366 daily inspirations for writers and artists, and no small feat, writer of Paddington the Musical. Olivia Award-winning director, playwright, was it? Yeah. The list goes on, but they're the highlights that I've had to write down.
Well, thank you.
I'm very flattered.
Insane. That's a very lovely introduction.
Yeah. Well, you've done it all. Are you tired?
I'm so tired. That's why I was hoping for the hotel room. Thanks, Paddington.
Yes.
So I could have a little bit of a nap. It's a bit mad at the moment because it is like catch up with being a freelancer where, I often used to think when I was younger, isn't it weird that you don't see an actor for 4 or 5 years and then they do 3 films at the same time? And it only took me a few more years to realise that, of course, that's because they're working constantly and it's just everything comes out at once.
Yeah.
And I'm just happening to have a moment at the moment where my book and Paddington and Merv, the movie I've just been doing, are all landing literally within the same 2 or 3 weeks of each other, which is crazy. But they've all been part of my life for 4 or 5 years. So, you have just the bumbling along where you think, oh, maybe everyone will think I dropped off the face of the earth. And then suddenly you're back and everything's at once. Yeah.
Wow. I want to talk about all those amazing projects you've done, but I want to take it back to the beginning for a moment, if you don't mind, because as someone that works in the creative industry myself, I'm always fascinated to how people started out. So for you, like, how did it all begin? What was the beginning of your journey? And as part of that, at what point did you go from aspiring, yearning, longing to feeling like, I'm achieving, I've kind of made it?
Well, it's funny,
Big question.
I do feel that.
Really?
Yeah, well, sort of, because I feel like you always, wherever you are in the sort of the ladder of work, and not that there has to be a hierarchy, but you do feel like, certainly in theatre you start on the fringe and you're working for free, and then suddenly someone pays you to do the thing and you think, I can't believe I get paid to do the thing I love. But at every level there's always people that are doing the thing you want to do next, and people that are sort of coming up behind you. So I feel like if you ever feel like you've made it, then that's probably time to stop, because for me actually making it is about being really happy in the work you're doing, being really satisfied, and feeling that you've got that you're really being stimulated. And the greatest joy for me is actually working with the best people. So I feel like that's what's really exciting about something like Paddington or Merv, the movie, is that I'm working with people who I really feel like they're at the top of their game, and it makes you, step up.
So were you a creative child, or do you feel like your creativity blossomed through experience as you started sort of working?
I think a bit of both. I came from a family where actually maybe the key thing, rather than them being creative, was that they were really supportive. And it was only when I was a bit older that I realised how rare that is, that actually you have parents that say, well, you don't have to get a proper job. You love this thing. It'll probably pay you no money. You'll probably be a desperate, impoverished poet living in a cardboard box. But if that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. And they did encourage me from the beginning to sort of pursue the things that I wanted, and never to see a kind of proper job or think of money as something towards that they would recommend aspiring towards. I mean, they didn't have a huge amount, so and so I don't think it was really part of our consciousness to feel like you ought to be working in the city or running a company. My poor parents have no retirement, but happy children.
Well,
so
that's the
go.
main thing. I mean, you do wear a lot of hats, but they all overlap, I guess. And you were explaining to me off camera earlier that you started off as a director, and then the writing came later. I didn't realise that.
Accidentally, yeah. Wow. Well, I didn't know that women were playwrights. I know that sounds really naive, but when I was at school, looking at the GCSE drama syllabus, for example, or the Lambda exams, you had to choose a play from a list of classic playwrights, and there wasn't a single woman on that list. I never studied a play by a woman, and it didn't really cross my mind that that's something that I could do. But yeah, I do think that you need to see it to be it. I think that's true. And so when you're not, and also particularly being a young woman, there was something that felt really arrogant to me in thinking I could just write something that comes from my brain, put it on a stage, and expect people to give up their time and their money to listen to something I have to say for 2 hours. That felt like such a huge leap in how confident you'd have to be, and that you'd have to really have something that was worth putting on stage. So it took me quite a while before I had that. And it was only slightly by force that I ever wrote a play in the first place. And actually I have the National Theatre Studio to thank for that, because I'd had an idea for a play which I was really passionate about making.
Is that Blue Stockings?
Blue Stockings.
Yes.
So it's about the first girls to go to university, and the fact that they weren't allowed to study, they weren't allowed degrees, they had to kind of secretly carry chamber pots around with them because the university refused to build toilet facilities for women, and they were sort of these crazy renegade rebels, and they an amazing force of nature. And I just hadn't realised in the UK how much women had to fight for the right for an education. And it was around the time that Malala Yousafzai was shot, and also that we were having student protests about tuition fees, and I just thought, I can't believe that people don't know about this moment in history where there was riots in Cambridge because the women wanted to be allowed to graduate, quite rightly, when they'd studied alongside the men, and the university said, you can study, but we're not going to give you the exam. They sat the exams, and then they just pretended they hadn't been there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that that's in such recent history as well. I don't think our generation, well, obviously you don't understand, but I think the generation that's come after us has no idea.
No. And that's why I felt like it was so important.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to write this play, but in my mind I was entirely a director, even though I'd worked in new writing for quite a few years. And so I took the project to the National Theatre and said, I really, really want to make this play and I don't have a writer. And they said, oh, tell us about it. And I started saying, it's about this and this really important thing happens. And I think there's these characters, all of which I'd made up. There's this girl and there's this other person and there's this lecturer. And they sort of sitting there going, you just got to write it yourself. And I said, but I'm not a writer. And I was so worried about exposing myself because I was a director who worked with writers. And I thought, you know, they always rely on me for notes and for guidance. If it turns out that I'm a terrible writer, that's really embarrassing. And then the studio said, look, some workshops dropped out in 2 weeks' time because it's the end of the tax year. We've got a space. We can give you a week. We can give you 12 actors for the week and you can test out your show, but we're not giving you a writer. It's you or bust.
What an opportunity.
Yeah, so
I mean, scary. And
it was terrifying, yeah. And I spent the whole of the first day avoiding giving people any pages. I'd written loads and the actors were sitting around really eager to read. And I spent the whole morning talking about the premise of the show and they were all there going, Can we actually have a look? I was like, no. Just, you don't want to see them. And then they mutinied at lunchtime and I had to read it with them in the afternoon. And then, kind of the rest is history.
But it shows what faith the company had in you already, obviously through your role as a director, in order to put you in that position and put time and effort and energy into that, knowing that you were going to make it work, even if you didn't believe in yourself at that point.
Yeah, and I really didn't. And I don't know that they had any proof that what I was going to do was any good, but that sort of faith and those sorts of buildings, whether they allow you to workshop something, I mean, that's why I just think we should really continue to push for arts funding, because had I not been given that opportunity, that play would never have got written and I probably would still be directing, in lovely regional theatres, but I wouldn't have realised that I had a voice that I could share.
Let's talk about the little fella. So
the little fella.
The project Paddington, you've touched on. How did that come about? So you say it's been 5 years in the making.
Yeah.
Did somebody approach, like, what was that first phone call or email or like?
Yeah, well, it was a real surprise because I've always thought that, so Sonia Friedman, who runs Sonia Friedman Productions, funnily enough, is such a kind of key, guiding light producer in this country and in America as well. And I'd grown up sort of watching her work and the shows that she put on, thinking, that's incredible. I wonder if one day I would be able to do an SFP show. And my agent called me about 5 years ago to say, Sonia Friedman's called. She's interested in you writing this musical. You can't tell anyone, but it's about Paddington. And I was a bit like, what? Firstly, really? I've never written a musical before. Is she sure? And also Paddington. And I thought, is that a kid's thing? I'm not sure about that, because I love the premise of it, but I don't want to do my sort of work isn't normally work for children. It might be for families. And then I went in to talk to them about it and immediately kind of realised what a special thing this might be. And then by then they'd approached Tom Fletcher about writing the music, and we got on like a house on fire. And Luke Shepherd as the director, and they put the three of us together, and we basically spent about a year in a room bashing ideas around. And in fact, I wrote nearly whole show in a way during that year, which didn't start where our show starts in the station, but started much further down the line, kind of after the first couple of films, when Paddington's been in London for a while.
Okay.
Because we were originally really keen to do something completely new. And for my money, adapting something can sometimes be really creative, but if you've got to very much stick to the guidelines of a story that already exists, that can hold you back a bit in terms of being able to make it your own. But we realised quite quickly that actually the reason we all wanted to tell the story is because Paddington is a refugee, and his sort of origin story of arriving at the station and not having anywhere to go and finding a family is why it's such an important story. And so we then took that as the kind of, I guess, the kind of external structure, foundations, using the stories and using the first film as kind of temp posts, and then built a story around it and added in lots of new characters and new sequences. So the opportunity to make original work's been huge, and it's been so much fun, and a roller coaster, and slightly terrifying because everyone flipping loves Paddington.
Oh, well, he's
and the pressure to get it right.
I read it, I think it was in the programme at the front, where Tom Fletcher said that it's like the Beatles. You know, the character has such, it's so ingrained in British culture, which has now gone international due to the films. The clip with the Jubilee with the Queen, which I was telling you about afterwards, or trying to reenact, you know, it's just so beloved by the nation. I can't even imagine the weight on your shoulders when you were putting it together.
Yeah.
But I suppose as a writer, then, sort of creatively, when it's such a historic, if you like, story, how have you managed to keep it feeling relevant to a modern audience, you know, or do you think those sort of ingredients are there and you just sort of put a spotlight on them?
Well, I think I think there's a universality in the story because it is about a migrant. I mean, that couldn't be more relevant ever than it is right now. But we've absolutely embraced a sense of London as a character in what London is now, in terms of how diverse it is, for example. And that felt really important, that we weren't making a show about the sort of very white middle class Windsor Gardens, that actually now, if you look at any part of London, I mean, I live in Lambeth and there's 36 languages spoken in my borough. I think that's the most anywhere in the country, because we're really a sort of a mash together of so many different people from so many different places. And we wanted to include that in the show because it's about someone coming from Peru and then finding a home and making a home here and contributing something culturally and also in his spirit. So that in itself felt really modern. And we also tried to make sure that the show, it has a sense of maternity in terms of some of the jokes, but we didn't want to make any specific references. Like, for example, there used to be a joke in it about a hybrid Volvo. And then we cut it out because we thought, oh, hang on, it dates. It gives us a very specific year. And it's really nice to feel like, a bit like the films, they feel period. But there's also a modern sensibility in the writing and the humour. So,
That's all the best stories, I guess, aren't they? They're the timeless ones. It feels to me, from an outsider looking in and a fan of your work, that that's the sort of story that you're attracted to. You know, you mentioned before that you like positive stories and uplifting stories. Is that a conscious choice?
Yeah, it really is. And I think I had a sort of experience a few years ago when I lost my dad. When he was really ill, he wouldn't admit that he was ill at all. He knew he was and we knew he was, but he wouldn't talk about it, and he pretended he wasn't, very successfully actually, which I think is partly why actually he survived for much longer than expected, because he just went, I am not ill.
He refused to accept that.
Fine. Which was amazing to watch and so inspiring in a lot of ways. But the way I knew that there was something wrong was that the only chip in his armour was that he didn't want to watch or read stories that weren't uplifting and life-affirming. And I think because he had a short amount of time, he didn't want to spend that time, you know, thinking about how grim the world is. He wanted to enjoy it and imagine that it's a wonderful place. And I thought at the time, I only want to make stories that someone like my dad, who has this limited amount of time, would enjoy watching if you only had a short amount of time. And then I kind of realised, but that's the case for all of us. You know, we've all only got a certain capacity to watch and absorb things. And if I can spend my time putting out stories that I think make people feel hopeful, or you might leave the cinema feeling a little bit better about yourself or about life than when you arrived, to me that's really valuable. And we tend to, particularly in Britain, put on a pedestal work which is dark, grim, tragic, state of the nation, as if it's culturally more important and it's sort of better and more worthy. And I just don't believe that's true. And often it's, you know, it's not taking away from those beautiful stories. And I have huge respect for people who make that kind of work. But creatively, it takes you so long. Like, this took me 5 years making the show. And so I've been able to live in a really happy place, imagining the great things, telling jokes and, you know, telling a happy story. Just for me getting up in the morning and doing that. If I had to get up and go, all right, let's reimagine myself looking at this dead body in a ditch, this woman, something terrible's happened to her, just, it would be much harder to get on with your day, you know.
I am such a sucker for sort of energy and vibes, and I'm so with you on that. Like, making light of it, I guess. I can't understand how people can watch like those murder documentaries before bed to like, unwind. I fundamentally can't understand it. I am like a uplift, good vibes, happy times type person, because I absorb it in my very soul. So yeah, I love everything you said then, and I think it's really important. So talking about this amazing movie that's coming out, or has just come out, I believe when this goes to air, it would have just come out. It's called Merv.
It's called...
Love it already. Great name. And it's Zoe, not Zoe. Zoe Deschanel, Charlie Cox.
And Gus the dog.
And Gus the dog.
Yeah.
What can you say about it, if anything?
Lots.
Oh, good.
I'll tell you anything.
Oh, brilliant.
There's
Tell me everything.
No vetoes on it, I don't think. So it's basically the story. It's a romantic comedy. And it is a holiday movie, but hopefully one that you could watch at any time of year. Okay. So it is Christmassy. So if you want to watch it for Christmas, great. But also doesn't have to be just for Christmas. And it's about a couple who are in their 40s who have split up and they share custody of a dog. And Merv, the dog, goes to the other person every weekend. And the couple don't get on anymore and they're living very separate lives. And Gus he starts behaving weirdly and they take him to the vet and the vet says, I'm really sorry, your dog has got depression. Have you got any idea why your dog might be depressed? And they're like, no. And it comes out obviously that this poor dog is having his life split between this pillar and post. Not unlike lots of dogs in a kind of divorce settlement, not unlike lots of children. And it's really tough. And so the vet says, look, you got 2 weeks to cheer your dog up, otherwise he's got to go on Xanax. Which is a thing.
Doggy Xanax.
Doggy Xanax is a thing.
Okay.
And so Russ, Charlie's character, decides on his week that because they live in Boston, it's absolutely freezing and Merv doesn't want to go outside because of the snow and his little paws. He finds a dog beach in Florida, which is like a holiday resort for dogs, and decides to take Merv to Florida to cheer him up. And Zoe's character, Anna, realises quite quickly that she thinks that the reason why, the thing that's going to cheer Merv up is if they are together. Not necessarily romantically, but at least spending the time to cheer him up.
A squad back together again. Yeah.
And so she follows him to Dog Beach in Florida, and it's a will they won't they get back together.
Right.
So great fun.
And how they say don't work with animals and children. How was that directing a movie where the star was a canine?
The star was a dog.
Yeah.
And not only that, it was set at Dog Beach, which involved about 120 dogs across the whole 7-8 weeks of the shoot. And there's scenes like dog yoga, for example, where you've got 16 dogs in a room all coordinated doing dog yoga, which is not the thing that you want on day one of your shoot. So it was kind of chaotic, but it was also a great joy. And there's lots of set pieces. Like there's they go off to a kind of retirement village at one point, and there's a huge dance with all of the old people and the scenes with kids, which was much harder to shoot than the scenes with dogs.
Yeah,
so it was kind of baptism by fire, but we had a great time. And actually we shot in Wilmington in North Carolina, and they were so supportive, such a great crew there. And it was, we had a blast.
So the experience living in America for
Yeah.
sort of 7-8 weeks, was it everything that you thought that would be, working in an American movie set environment as
Yeah,
opposed
it was
to the UK?
really interesting. And it was completely different. I mean, firstly, catering is totally different, but also just dealing with the weather and all of that. Because actually, I was away for a year doing that movie, because you do 6 weeks, 2 months prep, all the location scouting and casting and everything, which we did part of, or the casting end of it, in LA. And then I moved to Wilmington in North Carolina for prep. But I loved living there. I loved the people in Wilmington. And I got to live on a condo on the beach where I would open the curtains in the morning and you saw dolphins and pelicans outside the window. So it was just the dream. But then I moved to New York for 6 months to do the edit, which was also, I mean, a huge part of why I wanted to go and have that adventure, because I always thought if I'm going to go and live in America, I'd love it to be for work, so that you've got a reason for being there and to meet all the local people. But New York was about 90 degrees when I arrived, so I had it. And the funny thing that, you know, it's not all glam. I'd had the loveliest time on the set and I'd made such good friends with the actors and the crew, and they feel like your family, especially being away from home.
Yeah.
But the weird thing about being a director is that you're the only person who continues the journey with the film. So everyone finished, we had our wrap party, and then I moved to New York on my own, and a little bit like Paddington coming to London and not knowing anyone. I knew a couple of people, but suddenly I was in New York and it was just me. And I had this kind of film in my bag and met an editor to make the movie with who I didn't know at all. And it's just then the two of you in a room for weeks and weeks and weeks, and a different group of people who haven't been part of the journey so far.
Yeah.
So it was actually, like, took me a while to find my feet. But then by Christmas when I left, you know, you feel then like you've made your community and you've got friends for life, and also done the entire gamut of weather and clothes. I turned up with only summer dresses and sandals, and then you get to December in New York and it's,
that's brutal, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. So it was a proper life experience. Yeah.
And these are all of the sort of parts of the process that I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into it.
Yeah.
And as the director, you know, you've got such a vision of what you want that project to end up like.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're on set with the actors and you're creating one part of it. But actually, a lot of that sits in the hand of an editor as well.
Yeah.
Who, as you say, hasn't been involved in that filming process. So then you have to be able to articulate your vision that you carry through, again, with someone new.
Yeah, and also make space for their creativity and everything they bring to it, and not be so attached to exactly what you thought it was as to not be flexible at all. And it's an interesting kind of power dynamics, a bit of a grim term, but that question of who's storytelling, because you can't use the equipment as the director. You're watching someone, and some directors kind of saying, stop there, that's that beat, and I want this shot there, and then go into this shot there. And for other people, the director doesn't even come in the morning, and the editor does lots of assembling, and they come in and go, yeah, great, or how about twisting that a little bit. So it's always an interesting journey, working out how you can make the most of two people's creativity together, and not for any one person to kind of be arrogant enough to think, but I'm the best at telling this story, and actually go, you know, your ego is not important. What's important is the story. How can we tell the story the best?
On creativity, beautiful segue to your wonderful book. I'm going to...
Here it comes.
Thank you. I mean, she's a beaut.
Isn't she lovely?
I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I can't. I do like a nice looking book, and this is a beautiful looking book.
Yeah, I love beautiful designer who put that together.
Yeah, so please tell me. I mean, the premise: a year of creative thinking, 366 daily inspirations for writers and artists. I want you to tell me about it. However, I have done my research on you, obviously, and I did hear you explain something which I'd like to hear you speak about, which is that you've written this not just for people that define themselves as being creative, but actually, I don't know why this makes me emotional, because I think it's such a lovely sentiment, but you feel like now more than ever it's politicians that need to think creatively. It's speakers that are speaking to the next generation of developing minds, people that wouldn't necessarily normally identify as a creative, but the importance in creative thinking. in shaping the narrative of future generations.
I think that's right, and I think it's for everyone. I mean, for my money, like if you're a professional writer, you probably don't need a book about how to think creatively because you've somehow managed to get there yourself, and that's your bread and butter. It is for people who are already artistic and fulfill that, because a lot of the time when you do that for your work, the sort of tyranny of the blank page, staring at something going, I have to make some work, I don't know where to start, that's one of the scariest things, whether you're a professional or not. And the whole point of the book is every single day there's a different, easy, accessible, creative exercise, and they're not hard work. They shouldn't be. They're just fun challenges that you can do. But if you're not someone who, is particularly passionate about creativity, that it's your thing, it's also something that can give people something to do to just bring a little bit more imagination and lightness and artisticness into their lives on a daily basis, or once a week, or at a party, or if you have your weekly office meeting and it's a bit bland and boring, and you just go, all right, what's the exercise for today? Because there's one for each day of the year. And every day starts with a quote by some interesting creative thinker or imaginative person. And a lot of the time the exercises are inspired by what day of the year it is. For example, maybe it's David Bowie's birthday, and so it's cut-ups, which is a way he liked to make his songs. Or it might be National Pajama Day, so very appropriate. So there'll be something to do with that. Yeah. But for me, being creative is also like putting aside that 5 or 10 minutes is a chance for people to not just be scrolling on their phones or checking emails. And it's really hard increasingly with all of the chatter that we get and all of the online world. And I find this, even though it's my daily job to make stories, that I still can lose time and go, why didn't I just read a book for half an hour instead of being on my phone? That's such a waste. And
we're all guilty of it.
And sometimes it's great because sometimes you find brilliant, inspiring things, but sometimes it makes people feel terrible about themselves and depressed. And so actually just not looking at a screen and doing something else. And I really think, to your point about politicians and thinkers, that the trouble is when we get stuck in our own narratives and we're only absorbing what we get from the people in our immediate bubble, no one's thinking outside the box. And actually increasingly, and I say this with my kind of feminist and social minded hat on, we really, really need to think more about the world that we want to create and the narrative that we want to tell, and being open-minded and kind. And creativity is about being open-minded. And so actually, if we want people to be inventing strategies for climate change, making new inventions, if we want people to be saying, well, there's this political direction and there's that political direction and there's nothing in the middle and everything is prescribed by those two polarities, you need people to be going, what if? And that is what this is all about, being imaginative and going, what if there isn't just those two things? What if there's something in between? What if there's a different way? And I think the more that people can remember that when we were little, we asked loads of questions, and you didn't have this notion in your head that you shouldn't ask because you might get into trouble about it. And I went to talk to students at my old university, Exeter, recently, and was asking one of my old lecturers about how things are different. And she said something she's observed, which kind of broke my heart a little bit, was that a lot of students are now so, and these are drama students as well, who normally will say anything because it's interesting and controversial. She said she's really found over the last few years that students have become so wary of asking questions or giving an opinion or making a suggestion because they don't want to get anything wrong in case they get cancelled, in case they say something inappropriate. And it's meaning that actually they don't have any debates because people are too scared to have a voice. And that, I just thought, well, that's where you learn to have conversations with people and to imagine new things and to understand other people. If you can't have a chat and an open conversation and a dialogue, you're not really going to learn anything, and that makes things even worse. So I really think this is a really important moment for us to encourage everybody to think more openly and creatively.
What a gorgeous gift for somebody. The last thing I would like to discuss, which is a very important topic, but it's your involvement with the charity Think Up UK. And is it specifically the 50/50 campaign?
Time's Up UK.
Time's Up UK.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
And it's all about, so I hope I haven't got this wrong, it's about gender equality in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and sort of expands out from that. But Time's Up is kind of came out of the Me Too movement.
Okay.
And so it's about making sure that there is equal opportunity, equal representation and support for people of all genders and wherever you sit within that spectrum in work and in your creative life. And it is expanding to and should also be about every type of diversity as well, in terms of trying to make sure that it doesn't matter who you are, what your background is or how you were born, the body that you have, you still have an equal right to be creative, and that we need those voices. And so a few years ago I made a short film called Leading Lady Parts, which was great fun.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I love it. And for anyone that hasn't seen it, how can they just Google it and it'll take you to it?
Just Google or YouTube Leading Lady Parts.
I don't know what camera. Leading Lady Parts. Watch it. It is brilliant. It's like, how long is it? Like a little...
9 minutes.
9 minutes.
Yeah.
So thought-provoking, so well executed. It went like viral.
Yeah,
not that should be the measure of anything that's successful.
But it was lovely that it did.
Yeah.
And it's about the expectations of actresses, and it's about playing the leading lady and the ridiculousness of the expectations about what that brings with us. And it's got everyone in it, from Catherine Tate and Gemma Arterton, Gemma Chan, Florence Pugh.
I love her.
Amelia. It's got
Amelia,
lots of people in. Tom Hiddleston makes a little appearance, being the only man who's allowed in.
What all of those people were.
Yeah, absolutely. They really were.
And was it your role to cast all of it? Did you sort of...
Yeah, so I wrote and directed it. And it was partly because Gemma, who's a very good friend of mine, and I was sitting at yet another Time's Up meeting, and we'd been on various protests and we'd been to lots of meetings, and every week different people came in to speak to us, like great advocates, lawyers, activists, and both of us were kind of thinking, what can we do? We're artists. Like, we didn't feel like actually putting on a t-shirt and going on a march. It was a good thing to do, but it didn't feel like it was really using our skills. And we were both a bit down in the dumps about it and kind of said, maybe we should give up and become activists instead and do something useful. And then sort of questioned that and thought, well, no, what we should be doing is using the skills that we've got. And she said, well, I'll act in something if you can write and direct it. And then, of course, we were in a room full of actors, and all of the other actors in the room went, yeah, I'll be in it, I'll be in it, I'll be in it. And so that's how that happened. So, yeah, lots of goodwill. And we had a 99% female crew on that as well. There's about 80, 90 people involved.
Goodwill, bravery, people willing to stand up for something and actually put their face to something.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, the whole world is familiar with the Me Too movement, of course, and the awareness that that's brought with it. What would you say are the biggest challenges that gender bias that exists in the industry at the moment, and what can we do actively to ensure that that's corrected or at least addressed for the next generation of talent coming through?
Well, I think, and if I can speak to kind of gender bias, but also in terms of opportunities and diversity, in terms of cultural diversity as well.
Yes.
I think it's about encouraging young people to be creative from the youngest age and having access to opportunities. So, for example, the reason for years drama schools have been skewed towards essentially white posh men for the most part, and certainly people mostly white, and a disproportionate number of people from private schools, has been because, not because it particularly because it's expensive to go or any of those other immediate financially obvious factors, but because those people have been had access to theatre, to going to see it and to being in it when they've been younger. If you've got a school with great drama facilities because you've been to Eton, that's amazing. And by the time you're 18 and you're auditioning for RADA, you've been in 9 plays and you've worked, met lots of different people, and therefore your audition is going to be much better because you've simply got experience. You know what Shakespeare is in terms of the scansion of the language, and you're going to do a better audition. Whereas if you're brought up somewhere with no access to that, even just getting the opportunity to go to drama school or knowing that that's an option isn't going to be available to you. So I think the more that we can get opportunities for young people, and I'm really hopeful of that, and also by changing the diversity of the people on our screens.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it?
huge.
Representation.
Yeah.
And role models. When
Yeah,
you're a
role
young
models.
child. Yeah.
And also behind the scenes as well, and particularly in terms of writing and directing, because the more diversity there is in the people who are telling the stories, that's why someone like Michaela Holt-Cole has become such a hero, because she's written a show and put herself at the heart of it. In fact, she's written a bunch of shows, but her experience as someone who wouldn't automatically have had that kind of exposure, absolutely truthfully, brilliantly written from the heart, and then cast with a diverse cast of characters, the more that happens, the more that it slowly changes the industry.
Yeah, the whole conversation, doesn't it? So, yeah, as a combination of exposure at a grassroots level, so taking children of all backgrounds to theatre shows, to reading them stories, exposing them, filling their minds at a young and vulnerable age with all these opportunities that are out there.
Yeah.
And then representation so that they can see people ahead of them that have achieved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. What a lovely place to finish. Thank you so much, Jess. Well, I say that, but would you like some marmalade sandwich?
Of course. Look at that. Oh, look. And
Right.
also, don't know if the camera can see this, but there's some proper chunks of marmalade in there.
Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paddington.
Thank you. Okay. This is I've never had a marmalade sandwich in my life. Have you? Be honest. You have. Through this experience.
Through this experience, yeah.
But it's not normal on the menu, is it?
Delicious.
Well, I have to say, my life is all the richer for talking to you today. Thank you so much. I'm going to look at the book for sure, and I can't wait to see the movie when it comes out.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been such a pleasure. And next time, we're going to have the whole experience in a hotel room.
In New York, please.
In New York.
You've said that now on film, so I'm going to hold you to that. We'll be in New York.
Yeah.
Have
their
a
version of a
martini.
marmalade martini.
Deal. I'm
A
there.
marmatini.
Book it in, baby. Marmalade.